Welcome back to the Office Marketing Podcast with Mike Swigert, the podcast all about sales tips, mindset, and value bombs. 5 questions to help make your day more productive and learn a thing or two. Here is your host, best-selling author, Mike Swigert.
Hey everybody, I am here with Al Aylsworth. Al is a wealth of information, a wealth of great information, and a wealth of minutia when it comes to all things commercial lighting. Al has a great background, 14 years with Acuity, many years with GE. He was with a startup called Lighting Science, now known as Health E-Lighting, and he spent many years at Sun Lighting, but currently as the Vice President of Sales of Lamato and American Linear Lighting. Al, thank you for taking time out of your day to come talk to us.
Hey man, my pleasure.
So you've been in lighting since candles were kind of the general, but no, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a relative sense, yes. I mean, 1996, a long time ago. Yep.
96. So was the T8 lamp the standard? Was the T5 or T8 out yet? Or was it T12? T12?
T8 was out, but it was a few years before they really started the revolution of changing out all of the old T12s to T8. Yeah, it was sort of underway.
And the T5 didn't exist yet, right? Was the T5 after the T8?
Not really. I think the technology was there, but they hadn't perfected it or gotten the quality or price where it was going to activate yet. But yeah.
What was the main? Why was somebody switching from a T12 to a T8? Was that just so GE could sell more lamps?
It was an energy push. Certainly the manufacturers would want to do that, sure, but the energy push was a big part of it. And anytime you can come up with some kind of value proposition that equals money in somebody's pocket, and improve the life, so operating costs go down. You got a nice financial equation that is easy to sell.
I feel like we jumped right into this, and people are kind of like, obviously Mike knows Al. I have known Al for years. I don't want to give too much away. I do want you to get into like kind of your path. How you go from Acuity to Lamato and American Linear. So why don't you do that, Al? Why don't you just kind of walk us back to your past and how you got into lighting, and then sort of how you made your move to where you are today?
Sure. Well, I got out of college. I had an engineering degree, industrial engineering, and was a musician. Okay. So I was playing music when I came out of college. And so we were doing well enough at that time where I didn't have to get a day job per se. I mean, we were making enough money where we could pay the rent and have a lot of fun. So, my thought was I would do that until I just couldn't anymore. And it took me on into my, few years past my mid 20s. I had this engineering degree, and, somebody suggested, you probably are better for sales, because, I wasn't a practicing engineer. I had enough technical background to do a lot of different things from a sales perspective. And it turns out that engineering degree helped me a lot, really, in terms of understanding technology and how it's applied and, what turned out to be a lighting career. But I met a guy through just answering an ad in the newspaper back in those days, looking for a sales rep for a technical lighting sales position. The only company really in the lighting industry that had a direct sales force. And he had hired a guy who was a brilliant guy, well known in the lighting industry that passed away at a young age. But he had hired that particular guy, and he was previously a ballet dancer and very successful ballet dancer. And he, oddly, very brilliant guy, just somehow came across the guy's path. And the reason I say that is the thing that this particular fella who hired the both of us found interesting was this performance background and our ability to be comfortable in front of people, but smart enough and sort of handy enough to be able to apply a lot of those things and perceive situations because we were comfortable in front of people. And in fact, even today, I'm just as comfortable probably in front of 12 or 15 or 30 people as I am in front of one person, you know.
I love, hey,
So
Al, I love that because I know people that have insurance agencies and all they want are college athletes. Like they literally are
right.
like, because I know that like, if you know what it's like to get up at, 4:30 in the morning and, or I guess if you're an entertainer, you know what it's like to go to bed at 4:30 in the morning. But like, if you know what it's like as like a collegiate athlete, whether you played on your soccer team or golf team or lacrosse or, baseball. I mean, if you've ever met a salesperson that was a closer, whether it be, softball or baseball, oh my gosh, watch out. You want them on your team.
Yeah.
You want the second and
Absolutely.
third, one out, bottom of the ninth. I want that closer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, prior to college, really, I was an athlete like a lot of people are in high school. And that background of, playing a basketball game in front of people. I mean, you're throwing yourself out there a little bit, even in that regard. It's a team sport, of course, but you get this comfort level of performing. And I mean,
like
you're just playing a game, but you grab that comfort level. That actually helped me, when I started playing guitar in front of people or singing in front of people, and you transition that to the day. If you could sing in front of people, I thought to myself, surely I can speak in front of people.
Mm-hmm.
So,
now I have been known, you don't know this, Al, but I've sung in front of people on Bourbon Street. I've done a little karaoke. I will do Sweet Caroline. So if anybody knows me, the only reason I do that is because I don't know pitch or key, but I do know if you do Sweet Caroline, everyone sings along with you, and I'm really good. I'm good.
Absolutely. It's a good choice.
Exactly.
Good choice.
So now you've taken your first lighting job. How this path go from there, Al?
Well, I took it upon myself to go back to school. I was a little bit, I wasn't bored exactly, but I wanted to know why the company was making the decisions that they were making, whether I agreed or disagreed. The company was willing to invest in me and, paid for my education. I went to a small, school, Georgia College, but same accreditation level as Georgia State or University of Georgia. And that really changed my life in a massive way. It sort of sparked a lot of the things that were, from a business standpoint, sort of packed down in there. I learned how to deal with a lot of different people in the music business, for sure, and I got the technical side from an engineering standpoint. But when I really started digging through, a lot of these business principles, and in the lighting industry is very unique. It's a very tough business. And so, I sort of have an MBA in the lighting business is sort of the way I would describe it, because everything that I learned during those classes, I would usually apply something that I was going through, in my day job, to what I was learning, whether it was organizational behavior or whether it was, finance or, whatever it happened to be. And the distribution, sales representation, manufacturer relationship between those three is a massive triangular relationship in our business. It really helped me understand what everybody does and what the value that everybody was trying to create, in the value chain, which is pretty complex. The product in lighting is pretty simple, but the value chain is pretty complex. And really helped me understand that. So by the time I got through that, I guess, the guy who had hired me was retiring, and I guess he convinced the bigger boss that I was the guy that needed to replace him. So I was able to move into the regional manager position, and, managing people that used to be my peers. So that was challenging, but also very enlightening. and I learned a lot during those years. And you know, it turned out all of the things that I'd done in my past really oddly sort of came together and, you know, allowed me to have some success.
That's great. And then you went from Acuity to GE, right? Is that how we went?
Yeah, so I left Acuity. I actually followed the guy that I just mentioned, who was the ballet dancer, Zach Gibler, very well known guy in the lighting industry. Again, he passed away at a young age on a bicycle, which is just crazy, very tragic. But I followed him. He asked me to come lead his sales at this startup LED company. So this was prior to LED being mainstream by a long shot, but we could see the writing on the wall for sure. So I left and did that, and that really was my first real opportunity to lead sales. I mean, I'd had, you know, VP type of sales jobs at Acuity, and those were challenging and fun, but this was a really new technology at the time, and really on the bleeding edge. And, you know, it was a North American type of responsibility and very challenging, and learned a ton in a short amount of time. But what I learned was how tumultuous those situations can be from a financial standpoint. And I mean, we more than doubled the size of the company during the, you know, almost 2 years that I was there. But it seemed like we were putting a $5 bill in every single box we were sending out the door. And that's only sustainable for a period of time.
Yeah.
And so I did wind up at GE, you know, a couple years later. And, you know, again, North American type of responsibility, which was, you know, again, the antithesis of this startup company, going to this big, you know, $100+ billion corporation that had much sexier businesses than lighting. And, you know, when I mentioned GE, or, you know, have a national responsibility for, you know, some kind of sales force at a company like GE, everybody thinks, wow, that must have been a big job. And I go, you know, it really wasn't. It's about $150 million when we started, not even that, I'm rounding up. And, you know, GE Lighting, on the other hand, was a $2.5–3 billion company. The fixture and controls business was very small. And again, outsourced sales force.
Wait, okay, Al, you got to go to Niles Park though, right? You were up to Niles Park. All right.
I was there a lot.
All right. I've probably been in Niles Park with you. I just can't recall, but I'm going to segue here because of the GE time. If anybody knows it, what does NILA stand for? Do you remember?
I mean, it was the name. It was the first industrial park,
right?
You know,
right.
So I forget what it stands for, but you know, it was the first industrial park that had ever been designed, you know, from ground up, literally. And I mean, there's old photos of, you know, the migration of the workers and the everything that was downtown in Cleveland out to East Cleveland, you know, which is where NILA was. So, and that was you know, more than 100 years ago now. Really remarkable.
Okay. So it stood for, since we're both good, it stood for the National Electric Lighting Association, I think.
There you go.
And right. So people that don't know, Niles Park is one of the coolest places ever. So if I recall the story properly, Edison invited a lot of other lighting inventors and small companies to come work there at Niles Park. Correct, Al?
Well, yeah, it was a little bit of a think tank, but also the headquarters of you know, GE's lighting business. All right. So yes, it had a different shape and feel back then. You know, what the business was going to look like over the coming years had not really crystallized yet.
Right. Right. I thought one of the favorite things about it was, I think he told everyone that they could come there and work at Niles Park at a discount or for free at first, but they all had to use the A-lamp base, the A base. Am I remember calling it properly?
Good question. That's a tough one for me. I don't know that one.
So I would always geek out anytime I go up there. So like the concept of talking to a physicist that was on a low pressure sodium or high pressure sodium, or these people that actually worked on these lamps, the chemistry behind these lamps was always fascinating to me.
Yeah,
and
really,
or even the light, basically the lightning that they create to shoot the light up where the Twin Towers once stood. I remember seeing them manufacture that light. So
That's really,
if
the
anybody's
technology that's come out of Niles Park over the years is pretty impressive.
Absolutely amazing.
And
then you ended up at one of the largest, one of the best lighting reps in the country in Southern Lighting Source.
This episode of the Office Marketing Podcast is brought to you by Fusion Advisory. We help commercial contractors generate leads online profitably. Check us out at fusion-advisory.com.
Right.
And what was that experience like?
Yeah. So, that's when really we got sort of reacquainted. Mm-hmm. Turns out we knew each other beforehand, but we got reacquainted during those years. And, I sort of, my entrepreneurial juices had been flowing for a long time. And I liked being in a smaller organization. There's a lot of things about GE that I wouldn't trade, and I learned a lot, but it's just massive, just huge. It's very easy to get lost from an organizational standpoint. So the idea of trying something smaller that was a little bit more nimble and something that I had control over was something that I really wanted to do. So, I was able to work with Teak Shore, who's the owner of Southern Lighting Source. And we convinced GE to give us some money and allow us to set up another business that was focused on the utility, DOT, infrastructure related side of the business and of the lighting business. And, the vision of that business was to become more of a commodity rep for utilities and, try and just take lighting as one piece of all the things a utility, needs. It's primarily based on helping utilities deliver power from the point of generation to the point of termination. And of course, lighting is just, a point of termination a lot of times to a utility, but there's a lot of other materials. And we struggled. We were really good at lighting. We were great at lighting, but we struggled, trying to move from lighting because we were so good at that. It was such a core competency over to other utility-oriented products. And, we tried a lot of different models and we got the business up and running. We were making money. We had a really good run right up until the time where we worked on the Atlanta Braves stadium project.
Yeah.
And then right about that time is when we sort of brought the businesses back in together, and I started working on building the portfolio as the business has grown into Tennessee and into Alabama and into other parts of Georgia, so really focused on trying to help scale that business, especially on the portfolio side.
I love it.
And
I love it.
Yeah, and that was great too. I sort of think of myself as not a victim of the pandemic, but the last year has changed so many businesses, certainly created the opportunity for new business models too in the lighting industry. But it's changed a lot, and you start to realize the nature of risk associated with one of these small, businesses. And when that engine's not running and you don't have a robust number of projects that are out there to compete for, it's very difficult to sustain that.
Well,
right?
now you're
So
vice president of
that's
sales. Hey, Al, so now you're VP of sales at Lamano and American Linear. So now what? What are you doing? Like, where are we going with this company?
Right. So it's a great question. And, very small, $10 million, which is not necessarily that small in the lighting industry, but it's a small company. And the owner was somebody that I worked with at Acuity, 20 plus years ago. And so we were certainly more than acquainted with each other. And, when you're changing jobs, if you know the character of somebody you're going to work with, on both sides of that, it just makes the transition so much easier and less stressful. You're always wondering whether you're making the right decision, but when you know the people that are involved, it certainly makes it easier. So there was that, and that helped a lot. But now we're, in this particular product, the company's really focused on is linear lighting, right? And linear is very commoditized from a lighting standpoint. There's many manufacturers who make very similar products that compete for that.
All right, Al, you can't tell us you can't tell me you're selling a commoditized product. What is it that All right. What's special? This is throw me a nickel pitch. What is
No,
special
absolutely.
about
Listen, I think
this solution?
the strengths of the company, there's two different brands, right? So Lamato and American Linear are the two brands. And, the American Linear is very clear from a value proposition standpoint. And the idea is, that quality triangle that we talked about, or the project management triangle, a number of different names where, quality, price, and accessibility or speed to market. You can pick two. Right. And we feel like we address all three of those. And so that's sort of the basis of the value prop. We compete very, very well on price and have very good quality. And, we can get the stuff out the next day, which is pretty unique.
Whoa, Al, you can't say next day. Al, does it really ship the next day?
It really does.
Really?
Yeah, if you get the order in before 2 p.m., it will ship the next day.
All right.
So
now, many people that are listening to
every product,
yes.
not every product, but a rationalized set of SKUs will ship the next day.
Okay,
right?
good. Because I was in the lighting business. A lot of people know I was in lighting sales for about 5 years, and I needed next day. I'm not saying that maybe I missed something here or there, but occasionally maybe I missed something, and I sure could have used next day on a couple of projects. That would have been nice to have.
But listen, bailing people out is one of the things we do. Right. I mean, when a contractor needs to get off a job and, things are caught out in the Pacific Ocean waiting to find port,
yeah,
and you start getting penalties, for being late on finishing a project, that's another place where, you can turn to a company like ours and we can help you out. Right. So there's a number of different values.
There's about 5 project managers listening to this podcast, and they're going, yeah, freaking Swigert, you did forget, you missed that one strip of lamps that went in the hallway, or lights that, fixtures that needed to go down that hallway, or, I told you the room was going to expand by 15 feet. Yeah, I know you told me. I'm sorry. So, but it was a long time ago. All right.
Hey, man, projects change.
All right, let's tell all right. So tell me then, hey, why don't you give some tips? So you've got decades of experience in lighting, right? Hey, lighting is screwy.
Well, yeah, I guess so.
Right? I get it. Like, it's very screwy. And whether you're a project manager or a designer or a facility director, or maybe even just like another discipline, what's a good piece of advice you can give everyone in general when it comes to lighting?
Well, that's interesting. I think, boy, advice is a tough one, right? I mean, I think one of the things that I learned, really, you go back to school. I mean, it's sort of a variation of the you have to be able to see the forest for the trees, right, so to speak. And I mean, I had a couple of case studies that pointed out to me, they weren't lighting necessarily, but that you have to you got to force yourself to not allow the trees to get in the way of seeing the forest, right? The big picture, and understand really that the value chain in lighting is so big. And in comparison to, I used to compare it at GE, I would always compare it to the jet engine business, right? Their aviation business, which is multi-billion-dollar orders, very, very complex product, very few players, who make them, very few players who buy them. And, I'm sure that the number of relationships associated with that are very deep, and there's a lot of people involved in those decision-making processes, true. But, when you compare that to lighting, it's just the opposite, really. It's a very simple product, at least in comparison to that. And there's 14 different people on any given project that feel like they're the decision maker over a $2,000 order. Right. And I mean, you just, it's so easy to get caught up in the little things because there's so many little things.
Al, I'm going to pin you down a little bit. I want more advice. I'm a general contractor on this job. I'm a project manager for CV or JLL. Give me a little piece of advice. What's going to help me make sure the lighting goes better on my job?
Well, man, that's a very tough question, but
that's why I asked you, because I know it's tough. It is a tough question to answer.
One of the things that has hurt the industry, I think, is the value chain has been a very, follow the chain mentality, right? You don't go over the next rung in the chain. And, that creates ability for people to be able to say it's somebody else's fault. It's that guy, he didn't send that email, or we didn't get the order in time, or, we didn't get that order in time to set up the supply chain, or we didn't have any visibility on this or that or the other thing. And I think taking accountability and trying to take that to the highest levels of the value chain, I think there's a lot of legs in being able to do that. In fact, Southern Lighting Source does that very, very well.
Yeah.
And it's not easy to do, because, you might get in trouble with a couple of different people in the value chain trying to satisfy people that are at the highest levels of the value chain. And when you follow the money and you're able to do that, there's a lot of value in being able to just give the right information to people. And that's where you can create some unique relationships and really, sort of pull the curtain back on how this industry works.
I like it.
And, there's some value in being able to do that. It's very difficult because, again, there's so many different players, and at any given day, one player might have more pull than another in terms of the decision. There's a specification side, and architects and engineers, designers, interior designers and engineers, and all these different people who are influencing the specification, and then how that comes over to the construction side, and where the money really, forces things to transact. And you got people who are now in business to make money in construction.
Yeah.
And you're sitting here down here, especially a small little guy like me now, sitting at the bottom of the value chain with a linear, fixture that needs to go in a ceiling.
Right. Well, I just, I'd let you know, Al, you are now,
you're a lot of different people.
Yeah. You're now the dartboard, because they're going to be throwing darts at you all day long. And they're going to be like, wait, I thought you said you deliver in a day. Well, we do deliver in a day. All we need is the spec and an approved vendor or a preferred orderer, and we're good to go. Right.
Well, everybody has their little things that they can do for their clients that make them special, that create value. Everybody has those things. And, what we realized is that there's so many, well-defended hills. People have these great streams of business that you can't break into, and they're generational in a lot of cases. I mean, these relationships go back 30 and 40 years. I mean, people who run in businesses now got them from their dad, and it's very difficult to break those kind of relationships. So you have to find a different way, and you can't be afraid to do it. Yeah. It's very risky to do it, but when you realize that people in the chain can't take things from you because they don't give you anything, and there's less punishment, possible in that regard, and you can get up the value chain to people who can supersede those decisions. You got another path. So,
well, there's that fine line, Al, because if I'm a designer, I just want my job to go right. I want it to be pretty. I drew this picture, this vision with my client, but I also want my certificate of occupancy. It's one of those where there's
no doubt.
And pulling out all the BS on these jobs, and lighting is infamous. So at the end, we're going to give everyone.
Mike, you know this well. You know this very well.
I know.
When you talk to an architect, an architect will say lighting is the bane of their existence. And why? Well, they'll say, well, I never get what I want. And if I am going to get what I want, the budget is always blown. And how can an architect not get what he or she wants? How can they not get that? How can it,
there's so much horse manure. It is. All right, Al, we're going to finish up. I'm going to skip some of the normal questions because we covered tons of good stuff. And this is a question we did not talk about, but so Al sort of hinted at it. Al and I didn't officially meet while in college. We're both Auburn graduates, but it was probably the late 80s. He was in a band called the Month of Sundays. They'd play at a wonderful place called the Supper Club in Auburn, Alabama. Very high-end place. Yes, slippery floors and dollar beers. But
many good memories there.
I do a lot of great. I know they've since torn it down, haven't they, Al? Isn't it down to the ground?
Yeah. Sadly.
But so Al would be up there playing guitar and lead vocals and just great talent. And he really he's being extremely humble. The band he was in was very successful and very, very, very talented. But all right, Al, here you are. We're going to finish up with this. You have to pick a lead singer, a guitarist, a bassist, keyboard, and drummer.
You gads.
Right? Who are you taking at who's your rock and roll drummer? Who's it going to be?
Oh boy.
Got to go quick. You have 5 seconds.
Yeah. Okay. I guess I'll go with Neil Peart.
I either had you down for Neil Peart or Keith Moon, one or the other. I think you're going either way.
And it's hard. It would be hard to not go with Moon.
Yeah.
I mean, this is going to be tough for me because
I know. All right. So keyboards. And we're going to keyboards, and you can't pick anybody else from Rush. So we're going to go to keyboard. So keyboards, you're picking the ultimate. Who is the best keyboards at for any band?
My goodness. I mean, just pure raw talent. And I mean, I have a sort of a little bit more of a penchant for songwriters. So, I mean, I would probably go with Billy Joel.
Oh, great call.
I know it's shocking, but
yeah, I think that'd be great. I think it'd be a lot of fun. All right, let's go to bass. Who are we gonna throw on the thump? Who's gonna play
Paul
bass?
McCartney.
Who's that?
Paul McCartney.
Oh, well, now you have a songwriter with you. You've got to. I mean,
you're talking about a pretty superstarish band already, right?
Yeah. Hard pressed to find between him and Justin Timberlake that has a better following with a group. All right, so we're going. All right, lead guitar. They don't have to be the singer, just lead guitar. Who are you taking?
Okay, this you're going to be shocked by what I say here, but I unequivocally say Prince.
Oh, how many instruments did Prince play? Like, I think he played every instrument, right?
It's easier to say which ones he did not play, probably. So, yeah, I mean, the guy's he was a guitar virtuoso. You don't think of him necessarily that way. There's clips of him playing with other people. There's a famous particular clip where he's at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and these guys are just going, "Oh my gosh, this guy is just."
And not to go deep, but we need to follow. Did I ever tell you at the time my brother saw him at a small bar in Birmingham, Alabama, where they showed up at like 1 o'clock in the morning and played for like 4 hours?
Incredible.
Okay, all right. So let's switch. Now we got lead vocals.
Yep.
Who are we taking on lead vocals? And it can't be Al Aylsworth, because I know you want to play with this band.
No one would want that.
Yeah.
No one would want that. Oh man, God, I wasn't prepared for this.
I know.
I'll go with Bono.
All right, I was gonna say. I mean, I think I'm a huge Freddie Mercury fan. I think
Sure.
So, but Bono's pretty solid, not bad. The glasses annoy me a little bit, but I am gonna cut it off with that. I love your superstar band. Al, you are really the man when it comes to lighting and your experience, whether it be enterprise, startup, just bringing great value. Thank you for taking time. And what's the best way for people to get in touch with you? Probably LinkedIn.
Oh, that's a good way to do it. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I'll put your link in the show notes. But if anybody's just listening, Al's last name is slightly difficult to spell. But if you start going Al, and then his last name is Ayls, Worth, Aylsworth, and yeah, you like that? Believe me, I'm reading it. Too many times I've transposed the L and the Y. Sorry, Al.
You're not the only one, man.
I know. But Al is seriously, if you just want to talk music, you want to talk lighting, you want to talk, how to make sure that the value is going on in your job. I'm telling you, this guy is a straight shooter. He is insanely honest and caring and just a really good human being. And thanks for being on, Al.
Well, that's very nice of you to say, man. It's really my pleasure to be here. All
right.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to the Office Marketing Podcast. Be sure to join the conversation on our YouTube channel, LinkedIn, and Facebook pages. If you enjoyed the episode, head over to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.